Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our second session on New Jersey's clean energy future. I'm Jana Sultan, I'm the Vice President of the Southern New Jersey Development Council. For those of you who joined us on Wednesday for our first session, we heard from Senator Bob Smith, Chair of the Senate Energy and Environment Committee, who reviewed a few of the bills concerning clean energy that are moving through Trenton. We also held a panel discussion on issues surrounding transmission and distribution of renewable energy and the source and the I'm sorry about that. So we also held a panel discussion on issues surrounding transmission and distribution of renewable energy sources. And this morning, we're going to hear from BPU Commissioner Joe Fiordaliso and Congressman Frank Pallone on some of the policy next steps on that path to a clean energy future. Before we begin, a couple of notes. We're recording the webinar, and we will share in an email the link to both today's session and Wednesday's session for the replay and the slide presentation. You'll also receive a link for the program book with a directory of attendees and contact information. That way it'll help you network and connect with one another. I'd like to thank our sponsors for the Clean Energy Future webinar series, our title sponsors, DEI Consultants, New Jersey's Clean Energy Program, PSEG. Presenting sponsors were Atlantic City Electric, Atlantic Shores Offshore Wind, Infinity Energy, Sheet Metal Workers Local 19, and South Jersey Industries. And our host sponsors, Concord Engineering, DCO Energy, Hutchinson Mechanical Services, Intersect Energy, Performance Marketing, and Thomas Boyd Communications. And our supporting sponsors are Allied Experts, Garrison Architects, Jacobs Engineering, and New Jersey Energy Advisors. I'd like to welcome today's title sponsor, Rick Thigpen, Senior Vice President, Corporate Citizenship with PSEG. Rick is responsible for areas of business that drive public policy through advocacy, including federal, state, and local government affairs, sustainability, charitable activities, and corporate social responsibility. He's a member of PSEG's Executive Officer Group and is also chairman of the PSEG Foundation. We'll ask Rick to give some opening remarks, followed by his introduction of President Fiordaliso. So welcome back, Rick.
Good morning, Jane. Thank you very much. And good morning to the Southern New Jersey Development Council. I hope everybody's doing well at this virtual meeting. And Jane, I know we have 2 slides here. You want to go to the first one? And it's very simple. It's really just to remind everybody that the public service, as I call it, is has a very, very long history in New Jersey. And this picture right here is from 1926. It's the opening of the Kearney Generating Station, which at the time was one of the newest additions to the electric grid. And the man on the right in that picture is none other than the man himself, Thomas Edison, from West Orange, and the inventor of our industry. And he was at the opening. The man in the middle is our founder, Thomas McCarter, and the man on the left is the governor of New Jersey at the time, A. Harry Moore. For those historians out there, he's a 4-term governor of New Jersey from Jersey City itself. And it's just a reminder that public service is very proud of its 118-year history of providing energy to the people of New Jersey and being in partnership with the state government to make New Jersey a better place to live and work. And we are very proud to be a part of continuing that history. And that history is now taking a turn into the world of climate change. And on to the next slide, Jane. And public service is very proud today, and I will speak today some of the thoughts of our chairman, Ralph Izzo, about powering progress and about making our future more sustainable. And that means helping our customers use less energy, making sure that the energy that our customers use is generated as clean as possible, and then taking on the enormous challenge of delivering that electricity and energy in the most reliable fashion, and of course, always with an eye on affordability. So we're very proud of that history. We're very proud of our role in making New Jersey a better place to live and to do business. And we continue to hope to be the partner to New Jersey to move into a really brighter and cleaner energy future. And I will move on to introducing our special guest today, who is a gentleman I've had the pleasure of knowing for many years. And people should know that he is a teacher. And I used to work for a teacher myself, and I learned from him, once a teacher, always a teacher. And Joe is not only just a teacher, but he's had a long history of public service. He was the mayor of he served in the town council and became the mayor of Livingston. And many of us thought he'd achieved the pinnacle of his success when he became the mayor of Livingston. But little did we know that he was only just beginning. And that Joe moved up into the county government, up to the state government, including being deputy chief of staff for Governor Richard Cody, who then appointed Joe to the Board of Public Utilities in 2005. And he has now served at the board under 4 governors of New Jersey, including in 2018 being appointed president of our Board of Public Utilities. Joe is also now a member of the State Planning Commission, a co-chair of the New Jersey Council on the Green Economy, a member of NARUC's Committee on Critical Infrastructure and Committee on Energy Resources and the Environment. He's on the Executive Committee of the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative. He's a member of the National Council on Electricity Policy and on the Board of Directors of the Organization of PJM States, just to name a few. But most importantly today, Joe is also the Chief Energy Policy Advisor to the Governor of New Jersey. And in that capacity, he's the point man on helping New Jersey move into its clean energy future. He's responsible for navigating the oftentimes shark-infested policy and political waters that come with that challenge, including implementing the New Jersey Clean Energy Act. Joe has touched so many important issues, and that's just on my side of the world, from offshore wind to solar to energy efficiency to smart meters, and always behind that is the issue of cost recovery. So it's really a pleasure to introduce a gentleman who I've known for many years. He has a long history of public service. He knows just a little bit about politics as well. And he is, as I said, the point man on moving New Jersey into its clean energy future. So it's really my pleasure to introduce our chief regulator and someone I've known for many years, President Joe Fiordaliso.
Well, Rick, thank you so much. And that was a wonderful introduction. And I learned so much, and we have known one another for such a long time, but I've learned so much, which I have related to you many times from your dad, who is
Yes.
one outstanding gentleman, and a gentleman that I miss having around. I can tell you that. So thank you. And I want to say good morning to everyone. And it's such a pleasure to be here with you today, and the Southern New Jersey Development Council for having me here today to talk about such an important topic. And I'm so happy so many of you have joined us to hear about what we're doing here in the state of New Jersey to mitigate the effects of climate change that will have, if we don't mitigate it, a profound effect on our way of life and a profound effect on future generations. You will notice above my shoulder here a bug, and that's Chloe. Chloe happens to be a lightning bug, and she is lighting the way to a cleaner, brighter, clean energy future for the state of New Jersey. And she really doesn't let me go anywhere by myself. She's always with me. As you know, in addition to our regulatory responsibilities, we are heavily focused in implementing Governor Murphy's vision of 100% clean energy by 2050 and an 80% reduction in emissions relative to 2006. The governor has put before us an aggressive agenda, and under his leadership, we are operating at high speeds to achieve our goals. Since its release last year, our Energy Master Plan has served as our roadmap. This comprehensive document focuses on solutions that will help us reduce energy demand, modernize the grid, strengthen the innovation economy, reduce harmful emissions, and ensure equitable access to the benefits of clean energy. And with the cooperation of our utilities, of companies like PSE&G, JCP&L, Atlantic City Electric, RICO, are all cooperating to move us in a positive direction. The one thing you may have seen in a lot of newspaper articles and a lot of publicity it has gotten is our offshore wind program. Next month, we will be issuing our second solicitation of offshore wind contracts to march toward our goal of 7,500 megawatts of offshore wind by 2035. It is important, not only because it generates clean energy, but because of the economic impact it will have on the state of New Jersey. In our first solicitation, which we're currently working very hard on, over 500,000 homes will be generated, will generate energy from the 1,100 megawatts that we're going to put in the ocean. And these are going to be 15 miles off the coast. And if you have really good vision, you might be able to see them. We expect that just from that first solicitation, we will generate $1.1 billion in economic benefits for the state of New Jersey and create an estimated 15,000 jobs over the life of the project. It's very important. Everyone says, and it's true, clean energy is expensive. Yes, it is. But we also have to look at the economic benefits that we get from clean energy. We are transitioning into a green energy economy. And this is our way, one of our ways of mitigating the effects of climate change. In 2020, the board moved forward with its second offshore wind solicitation, as I indicated. And the award we will make next month, we are targeting between 1,200 and 2,400 megawatts of energy to be generated in that second solicitation. The first solicitation really brought to light the fact that New Jersey has the ability here and the potential of being the supply chain for the entire East Coast offshore wind initiative. New Jersey can be the center of this, which brings additional economic development. A manufacturing facility in Paulsboro Marine Terminal and other ancillary businesses that will evolve from that. Next year, we expect to open a third solicitation of at least 1,200 megawatts. And we will continue to have solicitations through 2028 until we have awarded 7,500 megawatts of offshore wind, which should be completed, as I said before, in 2035. Not only does New Jersey boast 130 miles of ocean coastline, well suited to support offshore wind development, our southern shoreline along the Delaware River provides access to offshore wind lease areas with no vertical restrictions to the Atlantic Ocean. Economic Development Authority here in New Jersey will take advantage of these features by developing the New Jersey Wind Port in Lower Alloways Creek, which will include more than 200 acres of purpose-built space for manufacturing and marshaling, and will support economic development in South Jersey, which will benefit all of New Jersey. The wind port is expected to produce $500 million in economic activity as we establish New Jersey as the hub for offshore wind. Additionally, two memorandums of understanding approved in 2020 by the BPU and EDA will provide nearly $6 million to support offshore wind workforce development and clean tech startups in the state of New Jersey. And in an effort to further create a clean energy workforce, earlier this week, Economic Development Authority announced the New Jersey Wind Turbine Tech Training Challenge, a competitive grant program that will award up to $1 million to a New Jersey community college that collaborates with union trade organizations and industry partners to establish an offshore wind turbine technician training program. We are very proud of the approach that we're taking because we feel it's a prudent approach, always keeping in mind the effect it will have on ratepayers. You and me, we're ratepayers. So it's always a balancing act for the Board of Public Utilities. So that's why we're prudent in our approach, and it's important that we continue to be prudent so that we don't overburden the ratepayer. Energy efficiency, which Rick and PSE&G and the other utilities are very familiar with, is a very important cornerstone in our clean energy initiatives. The cheapest energy is the energy you don't use. Our new generation of energy efficiency and demand reduction program will help New Jersey achieve some of the highest energy savings in the United States. These programs, which will be administered through our utilities, will help to lower energy costs for customers, reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, improve air quality, support environmental justice, and bolster the economy with a labor-intensive clean energy jobs program. Electric vehicles. 46% of our New Jersey greenhouse gas emissions comes from transportation. 46% of emissions. So it's obviously an area that has to be attacked. Obviously an area that we have to work toward electrification. We have been working with New Jersey Transit, and in the Camden area, there's going to be a pilot program of 8 electric buses, which we have helped to fund, to see how they operate, to see the range of these buses, how long can they be on the road before recharging. It also is going to involve infrastructure improvements insofar as charging stations. Range anxiety is one of the impediments of electric vehicles. Am I going to run out of power? Well, if you're on the New Jersey Turnpike, probably not. There are 9 rest areas that have charging stations, in addition to gasoline stations. On the Parkway, there are 3 rest areas that have charging stations. And the number of charging stations will continue to increase. Our utilities, our electric utilities, like PSE&G, will be partners in that. They will be developing charging stations along with private developers. As a matter of fact, we were down at a event on the Joyce Kilmer rest area on the Turnpike, where there are PSEG charging stations, where there are Tesla charging stations. We will continue to grow. We will continue to assure the driver who has range anxiety that they're not going to run out of power. We've also had great success through our Charge Up New Jersey electric vehicle incentive program, which helped to put over 7,500 new EVs on the road in New Jersey. Phase 1 of this program is on track to disperse over $30 million in funding to residents who purchased or leased a new electric vehicle. Phase 2 of the program will provide the incentives at the point of sale. We also plan to issue a straw proposal on medium and heavy-duty vehicles by early summer. That process will be similar to the light-duty vehicle process, which resulted in minimum filing requirements and an outline of the appropriate use of utility funding for these programs. Keep in mind, we're doing all of this and we still have our regulatory responsibilities. As Rick knows, we have to make sure that the utilities are playing nice in the sandbox. While the BPU continues to establish the appropriate role of the utilities and ratepayer dollars, Governor Murphy has continued his commitment to electrification of the medium and heavy-duty vehicle sector. We are so excited in the programs that we are achieving. One of the programs, when we get into the idea of equity, if we're going to mitigate the effects of climate change, every New Jersey resident should have the opportunity to participate in the clean energy revolution that we're experiencing today. Everyone, regardless of socioeconomic group, regardless where they live, everyone should have that opportunity. Through our community solar program, we are providing that opportunity, where people who don't own the roof over their head can still participate in the green energy revolution. And this community solar is a win-win situation. Not only does it allow everyone really to have the opportunity to participate, but most of these solar installations go on landfills. Land that wouldn't be used for anything else. So it's a win-win. And it's very exciting. The solar industry employs almost 7,000 jobs in the state of New Jersey. An important industry here in the state of New Jersey. The community solar, we have had so far over 450 applications to participate in the community solar program this year. All but one of those applications serves low or will serve low and moderate income communities. Equity, environmental justice, a cornerstone of our programs and a cornerstone of the governor's mandate. We also have within the Board of Public Utilities, Clean Energy Equity Office to ensure the fact that all communities have that opportunity to participate, to assure the fact that contracts are being distributed also to minority and women-owned businesses. We're in this together. And I know we've heard that term a lot over the past year as far as the pandemic is concerned. But we're in this clean energy revolution together also. Because as you know, this is a life-threatening, without being dramatic, situation. I probably won't be around to see the devastating effects of climate change. But certainly my grandchildren will, and their children and future generations will. And I've said this many times, and I may have said it here in previous speeches. We have a moral obligation to do everything humanly possible to mitigate the effects of climate change. The Board of Public Utilities' efforts in support of the governor's vision, whether it's our offshore wind program, the community solar pilot program, electric vehicles, energy efficiency, we're helping to build a cleaner environment. And that's what Chloe is leading us to. And a stronger and fairer New Jersey for all who call it home. Our clean energy program will be vitally important for the New Jersey economy. By investing in our clean energy workforce and infrastructure now, we can create thousands of jobs, strengthen our economy, and improve the health and safety of our residents for generations to come. The continued implementation of our clean energy program will also allow us to combat climate change and ensure a safe, healthier New Jersey for our children and grandchildren. I want to thank you again for listening to me, and I didn't get into the weeds on anything, but I hope this has given you an idea of the direction of New Jersey. And I just like to end by saying, without the cooperation of our utilities, electric, gas, all of our utilities, we would not be where we are today in moving toward a cleaner New Jersey. So I thank them. I thank you for listening. And I ask every New Jerseyan to please take a look at our clean energy program and see where you can fit in, what you can do to mitigate the effects of climate change. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Joe, for those remarks. Very thoughtful, very kind. And on behalf of what we are sure is your favorite public utility here at Public Service, we appreciate your leadership and your policy directives you've given to the state of New Jersey. I will now turn the program back to Jane for us to keep moving forward.
While we have the commissioner real quick, there was a very important question in today's Zoom Q&A feature. We have one of our attendees that would like to know where you got that fabulous windmill pen. I don't want to put you on the spot.
Well, if that person will send me, I have a whole bunch of them. And if that person would send me their address, I'd be happy to send them one. Or I can send it to you, Jane, and you can pass it on.
I'll do that. I'll zip Joan an email real quick with the contact information. We really appreciate Commissioner, your being here today, this morning. I think it's been a couple of years since we've seen you.
Yes.
I don't know if you remember, but you were our keynote speaker at our holiday luncheon a couple of years ago.
I do remember.
I don't know if anybody remembers those. That's when 150 people would be in the room, and we would greet one another with handshakes. And then, before that, we hosted several, very small policy-driven meetings, and you were kind enough to participate in one of those as well. And so we really appreciate your time this morning. I know that you've got a really busy schedule. I don't know if you've got a couple of other words you'd like to say about some of the things coming up on the board's agenda, just a couple of highlights.
Well, as I said in my talk, in June, we will be awarding our second solicitation for offshore wind, and that's going to range between 1,200 and 2,400 additional megawatts. So I think that's an extremely important step and shows the commitment of the state and the governor in moving in a direction that will help us meet our goal of 100% clean energy by 2050. And I think that's one of the big highlights as far as that's concerned in the next month.
Oh, terrific.
And if you would extend my best wishes at home, I would appreciate it.
I will do that.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Take care. Well, we're awaiting Congressman Pallone will be joining us this morning. And I wanted to just mention a couple of people who you'll see in a few minutes after Congressman Pallone's remarks. These are going to be our roundtable speakers. When we have a special guest like Congressman Pallone, we start with their remarks. And then the way this will work is the roundtable will come on. We're going to have Chris Daly with GEI Consultants, Doug Copeland with Atlantic Shores Offshore Wind, Mike Kushner with Infinity Energy, Safir Qureshi with South Jersey Industries, Michael Brayton with PSEG. And then I just got a note from the Sheet Metal Workers Local 19 that Brian Bush can't be joining us this morning. He has a funeral for one of his members. And so we are actually going to pass along Brian's question to the Congressman to his staff. That way his question can be answered. And I'm waiting for Congressman Pallone's staff to have him join us, which is supposed to have happened by now. So I don't know, do we want to have our panel on real quick? You know, I know that that several of you were participating in Wednesday's program and wanted to see whether or not each had a thought or two. Mike Kushner, if I can put you on the spot, we talked a lot about solar and a lot of the impediments of getting solar onto the grid. I know that you know, Infinity Energy does quite a few solar projects. If you wouldn't mind, if you're there, jumping in and telling us a little bit about some of the challenges that your projects are facing.
Sure. Thanks, Jane. Yeah, so as you mentioned, as a distributed generation developer and financier of projects, what we find is, you know, often the challenges are the same depending on project type. There's some commonality through, you know, the interconnection and utility approvals, and then you get into your municipal and planning approvals. And so as we look at different projects throughout the state and other markets, but here in Jersey specifically, you know, the key challenge that we always are aiming to solve, and we have the opportunity, which is fantastic for the SNJDC to put things like this together, is really trying to understand and convey how all of those pieces need to come together in the sense that we can't have conflicting agendas. It has to be somewhat consistent, right? And so if the state and the energy master plan have one goal, then the focus really needs to be that developers, investors, the utilities, the BPU, as well as land use and local municipal governments need to really understand how we make that all happen, you know, collaboratively.
Perfect. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
And perfect timing as Congressman Pallone has just joined us. So I'm gonna start by introducing the Congressman. He's in his 17th term in the House of Representatives. He represents the 6th Congressional District, which includes most of Middlesex County, as well as the Bayshore and oceanfront areas of Monmouth County, sort of the north part of the Jersey Shore. As chair of the House Committee on Energy and Commerce, about 40% of all bills go through his committee. The committee has the broadest jurisdiction of any. It covers healthcare, including Medicaid, Medicare, mental health and substance abuse, consumer protection, including food and drug safety, privacy, cybersecurity, and data security, as well as telecommunications and the internet. The committee also has jurisdiction over environmental protection, clean water, clean air, and climate change. And we've invited Congressman Pallone to remark on the committee's other jurisdiction, that of national energy policy, including renewable energy. And with that, Congressman Pallone, if you're with us, we have you muted. Well, then I'll continue to stall a minute while the Congressman jumps on. As I mentioned, we've invited the Congressman here because as chair of that Energy and Commerce Committee in the House, like I said, over 40% of all bills through Congress go through his committee through its hearings. You'll recall, you know, part of Congressman Pallone's legislative history has included his fight to ensure that offshore drilling off the state of New Jersey does not occur. I think we all in South Jersey, and I know the Southern New Jersey Development Council has been an advocate on banning offshore drilling off our coast. It would impact our tourism industry, which is probably about a $6 to $8 billion industry, particularly in South Jersey, obviously with our beautiful Jersey Shore, the casinos in Atlantic City. So we really appreciate the Congressman's steadfast support of ensuring that offshore drilling doesn't occur over off the coast of New Jersey. I think the Congressman is having some difficulty with his audio. So we're going to give them a second to try to. I apologize, everybody, for the delay and the issue with Congressman Pallone's technical difficulties jumping on and joining us.
You should be able to see you.
There we
Can
go.
you see me now, Jane? I think the problem was that you guys weren't letting me in.
Oh, well, that would have been the problem at all. You're our guest, and we're really excited to have you here.
All right, thanks a lot.
Thanks, Congressman. Take it away. I've already done your introduction. It was
No, I
wonderful.
heard what you said. It's just that you couldn't hear me. I heard what you said. Thank you so much for that kind introduction and for all that you and the Southern New Jersey Development Council team do. I certainly appreciate the introduction, and I know how important clean energy is for all of you. I wanted to just start out by saying that, I mean, obviously there was such a contrast between, you know, what we faced under President Trump and what we face now under Biden. We actually, I mean, the first thing that Biden did on the inauguration day was to rejoin the Paris Climate Agreement. And that was significant in itself. It certainly sent a signal to the rest of the world that we were back and that we were going to, that we obviously thought that climate change was real and that it was human induced. I still have, you know, a majority of the Republicans in Congress who take the position that climate change is not human induced, and therefore there's no reason to take any action. And that's still a basic ideological divide, if you will. But I think that Biden set the tone in saying, you know, we're back. We do believe that climate change is real and that we want to be involved. And I do want to say that one of the last things, the last time that I traveled abroad was, you know, until the pandemic began the previous March. I went to the Madrid UN climate conference. I think it was in December of 2019. And we purposely went there with Speaker Pelosi because we wanted to make the point that we disagreed with the president and we did believe that climate change was real. And when we were there, all the nations said emphatically that if the United States didn't rejoin the Paris Agreement and take a leadership role on climate action, that the international regime would collapse, that there was no way that China or India or the European Union or any of the other countries would be able to take that leadership, and ultimately the Paris Agreement would just collapse. And so I have to start out by stressing that rejoining the Paris Agreement is signaling to the world that we do care, and this is something we believe has to be addressed as significant. And particularly for a state like New Jersey, because we are on the front lines of this climate crisis, you know, whether it's sea level rise or it's, you know, pollution that's coming from other states further west, that this is particularly important to us. And of course, the biggest example of that concern in my district was Superstorm Sandy, which hit my district harder than any other congressional district in the country. And it was interesting because earlier this week, there was a study published in Nature Communications, which I guess I've never even heard of. It was some kind of scientific journal. And it said, it was written up in the New York Times, though, this article. And it said that 13% of the damage caused by Sandy, or $8 billion in damage, was caused by sea level rise induced by human-caused climate change. So we are going to see these more severe weather events get even more common and more severe as time goes on if we don't address climate change. And I mean, frankly, I don't have any scientific basis for it, but I also think that the pandemics are probably linked to climate change, because as the planet warms, the likelihood of more disease probably increases as well. But we also had the issue of extreme weather conditions impacting our energy infrastructure. So, whether it's hurricanes or wildfires or flooding or whatever, it clearly, we know that that's true as well. And we saw the situation with Texas, with the power grid and the electricity infrastructure there because of extreme weather, that it got very cold and their system broke down. So, I mean, I don't have to remind everybody about the challenge that faces us. But again, with these great challenges, there also is great opportunities because, I do believe that as we move and address climate change and we move towards renewables and clean energy, that there's an opportunity for a lot of new good paying jobs in manufacturing, construction. And I also think that we need to take the lead on these things because we don't want, all the solar panels to be manufactured or the wind turbines to be manufactured in China. I mean, it's one thing to say that we're going to have jobs in putting in solar panels and setting up offshore wind, but I want us to be manufacturing those things and get the jobs that come out of that as well. So for all these reasons, we in the Energy and Commerce Committee, I should say the Democrats, because again, it's hard to get the Republicans to support. You can do a lot of the things. I know I sound very partisan. I want everyone to understand you can get Republicans to do things on energy reliability or efficiency. You can, and we do, and we have, and we will. But you just can't couch it in terms of climate change. So, for example, at the end of the year, last year, we did a clean energy package, about half of which ended up being included in the omnibus appropriations bill, the end of the year, the lame duck package. And we did a lot for energy efficiency. We even did a lot with hydrofluorocarbons, phasing them out. But in order to do that, I couldn't couch it as a climate initiative. I had to say, look, upgrading the power grid is important because we need more resiliency. Or I can say extreme weather conditions require more resiliency, but I can't say the extreme weather conditions have to do with climate. So I don't want to give you the impression, as much as possible, we try to do things on a bipartisan basis, but you have to kind of get away from the idea that this is addressing climate change if you want to get Republican support. You can't say that it's because of climate change, because then immediately they say, well, that doesn't exist. And you're some kind of nut thinking that we have this problem with climate change. But in any case, so in our committee, we put together in draft form, but this year we actually introduced a bill, Jane, called the Clean Future Act. And it's basically an effort by the Democrats on our committee to take the things that are within our jurisdiction. And I know, Jane, you explained our jurisdiction quite a bit there in the beginning, and address climate change, or come up with a climate action proposal, the Clean Future Act, that is within the confines of our jurisdiction, which is about maybe 2/3 of the issues that would fall under the rubric of climate change, fall under our jurisdiction. And the Clean Future Act touches all sectors: the power sector, the manufacturing sector, the transportation sector with electric vehicles, the building sector. It's across the board. And obviously I could take hours to talk about it, and I'm not going to do that because I do want to get some questions in from some of you. But I do want to talk about a little bit about it. It basically, the heart of the bill is a commitment to achieve net zero greenhouse gas pollution no later than 2050, with an interim goal of reducing pollution by 50% from 2005 levels by 2030. And this is consistent with the Paris Agreement and obviously with the goals of President Biden. And it also is an opportunity not only to create jobs, but also to address economic justice too, because we know that we have these environmental justice communities. Think about the communities that are around the Port of New York and in New Jersey, around Newark and Elizabeth, for example, that are negatively impacted by higher levels of pollution. Those are environmental justice communities, if you will. But a few things about this Clean Future Act. It would implement a nationwide clean electricity standard, or CES, requiring all retail electricity suppliers to obtain 80% clean energy by 2030 and 100% clean energy by 2035. Again, this was articulated by the president in his address to Congress a few weeks ago. But in order to achieve that target, the federal government has to invest billions of dollars in stable and affordable clean energy development and deployment. But I do want to stress that we don't say that that has to be achieved with any particular source of energy. So in theory, if you could capture coal, for example, and it doesn't release any additional greenhouse gases because it's been captured or sequestered, you could use that too. We don't say you can't have fossil fuels, right? But of course, you know that economically and feasibly, is that possible? If it is, then you can include it. It doesn't, it's neutral in terms of the energy source, is what I'm trying to say. But that does, you can't ignore the economics of all that. And then the biggest greenhouse gas pollution source is transportation, right? So our bill makes substantial investments in deployment of electric vehicles, charging stations, funding to clean up ports, things of that nature. It also, because I know some of you are going to say, well, how are you going to do this? Because a lot of people in the traditional fossil fuel industries may end up losing their jobs. But we have a whole program to support workers in energy communities, financial assistance, replacement of loss of revenue due to any major employer closures. So we're very cognizant of that, trying to transition people who might lose their job. The bill also modernizes the country's approach to recycling and waste management. So it has post-consumer recycled content standards, standardized labeling, collection of recyclable goods, implementing a national bottle deposit program. So what I want to stress is that these things all work together also. In other words, this is a comprehensive bill, a comprehensive approach. And the states are also involved in trying to develop plans, and there's a lot of flexibility to reach these targets. So they develop their own state plans, because I'm sure some of you are thinking, how's the state involved? And there's a lot of flexibility in terms of their reaching these goals. If anything, the model would be like the Clean Air Act, or where there's a national federal standard, but the states are involved in reaching that standard, and the federal government only steps in if the states are not meeting those goals, if you will. Very similar to what we do with the Clean Air Act. So then the last thing I wanted to mention before we take questions, Jane, is the president's jobs bill. As you know, over the last few weeks or the last few months, well, let me start over. In January, we put together, and in March, the president signed the American Rescue Plan. And that was the major bill, $2 trillion, that was designed to crush the virus. And our committee was very much involved in what that bill did to crush the virus, the vaccinations, the testing, having a national plan to give supplies out to states and hospitals. And that was the bill that also had the direct cash and more money for businesses and that type of thing. But now the president, since then, is embarked on this jobs bill or stimulus bill. The primary purpose of that American Rescue Plan was to crush the virus. The primary purpose of this new job stimulus bill is to grow the economy and create jobs. And in that context, there's a big bricks and mortar infrastructure component. We don't have the part that deals with the highways, resurfacing, building highways, bridges, tunnels. Gateway doesn't come under our committee, but everything that's almost everything that's non-transportation, but that's infrastructure, comes under our committee. So this jobs bill, the way the president has talked about it, and the part that comes to our committee, are things like upgrading the electricity grid, the water, upgrading water, getting rid of the lead pipes, which the president wants to do, brownfields, Superfund, health infrastructure, money for hospitals, community health centers, beef up the labs, and also the tech technology sector. So increasing build out of broadband and providing broadband access in parts of the country or for people, or upgrading the speed of broadband. Those are the things that come under us. And so all that has been put into a bill in our committee called the Lift America Act. You know, again, this is an opportunity, I would say, to take some of the things that are in the Clean Future Act that address climate change and put them in this infrastructure bill. Now, I'm not talking, this bill, this job stimulus bill goes beyond bricks and mortar infrastructure, right? There's a lot of social programs, which is actually the majority of it. But I'm not going to get into that. I just want to talk about the infrastructure piece. And so let me just talk about that briefly, and then I'll end. So in terms of the infrastructure piece for the Lift America Act, I gave you the broad categories of infrastructure that we deal with. But I also want you to know that that's a response to some of the things that have been happening now as well. And so, you know, we had the whole situation with the Colonial Pipeline being shut down. So that's the whole cybersecurity aspect of this. One of the things that my committee did in the last Congress was talk about moving a bill on pipeline safety and security, because as you know, the Transportation Security Administration pipeline security program lacks resources, and it's all voluntary. So unlike the electricity sector, which comes under FERC. And so we want to have a mandatory program to deal with security for pipelines and beef that up and provide resources for pipelines in the same way that we do with the electricity sector. But and of course, when I talk about upgrading the electricity grid, that goes back to the Texas energy crisis as well. We need more resiliency with our electricity grids, and also making them so they're compatible with renewables. So the Lift America Act addresses all these things, and but at the same time, we hope that in this jobs infrastructure bill that we can include some of the things, Jane, that were in the Clean Future Act. So to the extent that we can, address things, maybe we can put the clean electricity standard for the power sector in this infrastructure bill. We can certainly do things on resiliency. We can do things in terms of electric vehicles and charging stations. So now I'm kind of merging the two things that I talked about, Jane, right? Saying in this jobs bill, not only we would do major infrastructure initiatives, but we would try to take some of the climate action initiatives in the Clean Future Act and put that in the jobs bill as well. And I'll end there.
Thank you. Thanks, Congressman. You actually answered my question, which was, could some of the components of your clean energy bill find its way in an infrastructure bill? So thank you for answering my question. So we'll get to our roundtable participants and add them into the discussion. They're joining us on screen now. And I want to start with Chris Daly. Chris, if you have a minute, you could ask your question of the Congressman.
Yes, thank you, Jane. Good morning, Congressman. Thank you for your remarks. My name is Chris Daly. I'm an engineer and vice president with GEI Consultants, a consulting firm here in South Jersey that provides engineering and ecological services to the utility industry. My question is, you already actually spoke to all the unprecedented power outage in Texas, and how perhaps more preparation and infrastructure spending could have prevented that from happening. But for New Jersey's energy master plan to be successful, it needs to have redundancy and excess supply built into it for account for times of natural disaster like Superstorm Sandy. And President Biden's infrastructure plan has a lot of that spending built into it. You did explain that, and I think one of the important things is to figure out how will some of that spending for states like New Jersey, who already have a plan in place and have aggressive approach to supporting the president's plan, and is already achieving some of those goals that you explained, How will they get their fair share of funding when there are other states that have not developed their own plan for a clean energy future and instead are relying on the federal government to take the lead?
Well, that's always a problem because, as you know, when you pass legislation, it tends to be general and it's not, and it's the administration, whether it's the mayor, the governor, or the president and their agencies that have to carry it out. And the main thing that I would tell you is that I would be very aggressive in making sure that states like New Jersey that have really done the right thing still get their fair share of the money. But that's, I don't, Jane, I'm talking to you about legislation. I mean, to be totally honest with you, myself and my staff spend more time trying to implement the legislation than we do the actual legislation, even though that's not our job. And so, we're constantly calling up the federal agencies and saying, well, wait a minute, are you implementing this? And this is how you should implement it. So I guess you have to leave it to us to make sure that that happens, because there is a natural tendency to say, I'll use the health sector, right? I mean, obviously, when we, not to take up your time, but, I was one of the drafters of the Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare, and you have 12 red states like Texas and Florida that still have not implemented Medicaid expansion and have millions of people that don't have health insurance, right? So naturally, when we pass a bill, we try to address that because we know there's millions of people. And, you got a guy like Governor Murphy who goes beyond the Affordable Care Act in providing help to people, right? So there's a natural tendency at the federal level for the agencies to try to get to the states where they haven't done anything rather than the states where they have. But we have to, I will push back and, use whatever I can to make sure that that doesn't happen too far, because otherwise it's not fair to states that have taken early action. But there is always a natural tendency to help the people that aren't getting help because their state stinks, and that as opposed to the states where they've done the right thing.
So electing your congressman is important.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. I mean, we literally half the day is spent in trying to implement things that we've passed as opposed to just getting things passed. It's just the way it is. But you don't hear about that because a lot of that is behind the scenes, and you don't want to be in the media talking about beating people up, because then they don't want to do anything if you beat them up. You got to do it behind the scenes, kind of in secret.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for representing New Jersey, Congressman.
Sure.
Doug?
Great. Good morning, and thank you for your time this morning, Congressman. My name is Doug Copeland. I'm with Atlantic Shores Offshore Wind. We're actively developing one of the 2 lease areas off the coast of New Jersey for offshore wind. And I was just sort of curious, kind of given your longstanding support, 17 terms, by the way, that's pretty cool. It's definitely something to be proud of.
Don't repeat that. Don't repeat.
Oh, okay, sorry. So 17 terms for a, but yeah, just in certain circles. But given your kind of longstanding support for the environment and especially the state's push for offshore wind, and with this group here, all the associated jobs and economic development that will come with this new industry, do you have any suggestions or thoughts on kind of how we can really work with those who are opposed to this new industry in the state, just to kind of help bring them on board?
Well, it does disappoint me, to be perfectly honest. It's Doug, right? It does disappoint me. I've been a big advocate against offshore oil and gas, drilling off the coast, because there's not that much out there in the Atlantic, and the danger to our tourism industry, which is so important. If you balance the potential for like a BP spill and the amount of oil or gas you'd get off the coast of New Jersey versus the impact on our economy if we had a spill, I mean, there's no issue, right? So I constantly say to those who, don't like offshore wind, well, what is your alternative? You want offshore drilling? And of course, a lot of times they'll say, well, I don't want anything. And I say, okay, I'm not going back to the caves here. Okay. So I think it's a combination. I mean, on the one hand, you have to say, look, you have to be upfront and kind of tough and say, as a politician, and say, look, guys, you got to do something. And the cleanest thing here is offshore wind, and we got a lot of it. And if you're going to advocate that you don't want offshore oil and gas, then you better not be opposed to this. But then, then the next step, of course, is to, assure them that what's going to be done is going to be done in an environmental friendly way. And so that, you'll do analysis to show if there's impact on fish or marine mammals, or that, they're not going to be so close to shore that, you're going to see them, every day. I mean, that it's a battle because unfortunately, Doug, there's a lot of people that just don't want anything, and yet they want to turn on the switch. So it's not, I'm telling you, there is going to be pushback, and it's going to be covered by saying, well, we don't need to do this too quickly. Well, we do need to do this quickly. We do need to move towards offshore wind quickly and in large amounts, because we need a lot of clean energy to reach these standards. So all I can say is I'll work with you and, do the best we can. I guess Jane, I'm not really answering these questions. I'm trying to do the best I can here.
No, very much appreciated. Thank you.
Thanks, Congressman. And I know I committed to your staff, you'd have a hard out at 10:30, and there are going to
Well,
be.
we could take a few
questions.
more minutes if you want it. Let's take 2 more questions and then because I do have another event.
You're their boss.
All right.
And my
We'll
guess
take
is
2
not
more.
going to please you. So with that, let me ask Mike Kushner to ask his question real quick.
Sure. Congressman, again, appreciate your time and everything that you're doing on behalf of energy here. So my question is that obviously renewable and clean energy progress is important everywhere, but as New Jerseyans, what suggestions do you have as we see other neighboring and nearby markets putting out competitive renewable programs? What suggestions would you have for keeping that economic development and the development communities here and investment dollars thriving in New Jersey?
Well, now explain, are you talking about the people that would do installation of what
Sure. So I think it's multifaceted. So there's the job creation through installers, there's development generally, there's the private injection of or the injection of private investment into New Jersey. And so as we see emerging markets nearby, what suggestions might you have to keep that focus here in New Jersey?
Well, I know it's a competitive market, and the problem we have is, we're in between 2 major cities, right? Philadelphia and New York. I mean, I think that I think the main thing is, being innovative and creative, which I do believe the governor, Governor Murphy is very much in that regard. And so, I don't know if I'm answering your question, but I remember when Christie was first elected, and he was very big on, clean energy. Like, in other words, he wanted us, we were still part of Reggie at the time, and he wanted to have manufacturing of solar panels here and encourage manufacture of wind turbines. And then all of a sudden when he ran for president, all that went out the window, right? So I think that, you can work with the governor and state legislature and with me in trying to make sure that we're competitive. So if that means providing some kind of financial incentives for manufacturing of these products here, or building into the legislation provisions that say that you have to have local workers or train people locally or in low-income areas, we can do those types of things. And some of that is built into the Clean Future Act, but it's not state by state. So, you might have to do more of that on the state level. If that answers your question, Michael, I'm not sure it does.
No, it does. And thank you, Congressman.
Sure.
Saphir? And we're going to make Saphir's question the last question. That way we can have the Congressman back sometime again.
All right.
And thank you, Congressman Pallone, for the opportunity for some extra innings here today. I just wanted to know if you would consider supporting bipartisan legislation promoting renewable natural gas and hydrogen technologies to support cutting carbon emissions while utilizing current natural gas distribution infrastructure.
Well, Saphir, as I said before, in the Clean Future Act, and that reflects my ideology, right? The idea isn't to favor one energy source over another, right? So, for example, probably the most controversial energy source is nuclear, right? I mean, some of the environmental community is just totally opposed to nuclear altogether, right? We don't do that. We assume that we're going to continue to have nuclear power and that it's a clean source of energy, and that Yeah, I mean, financially, who knows if there'll ever be another nuclear plant because of the financial aspects of it. But we don't favor one source of energy other. The only thing we do say is that if you're going to use, natural gas or, well, you're talking about like RNG, right? Which is like the gas that comes from like the landfill or from incineration. Is that what you're talking about?
Correct.
Yeah, that is certainly allowable. Even regular natural gas is allowed, but you just have to capture the carbon. And again, I don't know how feasible that is. Some people tell me the coal's dead because there's no way to efficiently do that, or at least we haven't developed a technology. But as long as the technology is there and you can accomplish that, then it's fine. And I would support it. It's just a question of whether it's financially feasible and it's technologically feasible. And all right.
Thanks, Congressman. I know you have to go. You've been very generous, giving us an extra 5 minutes, and we appreciate that. Again, have a great afternoon, a wonderful weekend, hopefully at the shore.
It will be.
Thanks again for
I'm
your
leaving
time.
this afternoon to go back.
Excellent.
All right. Thanks a lot. Thank you,
All right,
everybody.
take
Keep
care.
in touch. Bye.
Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Again, we thank GEI Consultants, New Jersey Clean Energy Future, and TCG for their sponsorship, as well as our other sponsors for presenting these two series programs. Our next event is our annual construction forecast, which is on Thursday, June 17th at Stockton University. It's actually an in-person event, and we're looking forward to it. I know a number of our members are as well. You'll start to see the notices in today's afternoon break. The planning committee is organizing presentations on utilities and reinvestment projects, familiar, as well as a lot of projects that are in the planning stages in Atlantic City, the Morristown Mall redevelopment, some capital hospital plans, some hospital capital plans, capital improvements in Cumberland County, and a few more presentations. So we're looking forward to that. A special thanks to Randy McDonald and Ben Gallinelli on our staff for helping manage all the details for these two webinars, and to Marlene Salta, who's the president of the SNJDC, for helping cover everything else in the office the past week. This ends our program. We thank you again for joining us, and we wish you a really excellent day. It's a good garden a little bit, don't tell the boss. Enjoy your weekend. Take care, everybody. Stay safe.